G'day, this is Benjamin Carlisle. I'm a software engineer, I'm a systems engineer, and today I'm going to talk to you about the System Design 0.5 release. This is the System Design tool, which I've shown you before. This is release 0.5.3. If you're using an earlier 0.5 issue, then you may find the menus are slightly different, and I've added a few things and fixed a few things along the way. So this release, I'm going to show you a design for a music box from a recent Engineer Sky video. So let's get to it. We're going to define the problem statement here, which is that we're going to provide a music box. That's the name of our concept. It's going to have a user. And the idea is that we're going to have some relationship between the two items. We're going to have the music box play some music, and we're going to have the user appreciate the music. So if you can imagine, I'm talking about, you might have seen little jewelry boxes or those sorts of things with a little dancing ballerina. Something will spin around and it will produce a small tune. You wind it up and it produces that tune. But our problem statement here, we're going to say we're going to let's choose some colors, make it nice. We're going to provide music from the music box to the user. That's our fundamental problem statement. And we're going to make a number of design decisions along the way to make that a reality. So we'll save this. I'm going to save it in a little playground area, which I'll delete when I'm finished. And that's where we now control it. So the main feature of the version 0.5 release is this versions menu. It introduces some basic version control and the ability to get into some configuration management. So the first thing we're going to do is initialize a version control repository. We're using Git for this at the moment. That's currently the tool that's supported. Other tools could be supported in the future. But for the moment, Git is the one that is the ideal tool. That's the reason for that is because this is the tool that I'm using to develop the software itself. So I won't make anything, it's the easiest thing to do. So I've initialized that, and so now I can actually commit this change straight away, and I'll state that this is the problem statement, and I'm going to explore this area that we've just saved into, and what you can see is that I've got this Rabbit VCS tool in place, and that lets us interact with Git, and in particular it lets us set up remote repositories and do all the fancy stuff that I don't think I really want to do in the tool itself. The tool itself supports very basic operations like initializing a Git repository and performing commits and showing differences between versions. So what I'll show you now is the initial thing is I'll set up a tag, and I'll say that this is version 1.0 of our design. The problem statement is version 1.0. We can increment things as we go. So I actually need to add this version 1.0 and point it to the master and add it. Done. So if I now look up here, I've got no diff currently selected, but I can now select the master branch because there is a commit in the master branch, and away we go. So if I now create, so now let's look at the detail of the music box. So we'll dive into here at the next level down. We'll flow down the external items and functions, and we will start to create the music box. The main concept of the music box is that we're going to have a rotating drum that is going to encode the music. It's going to encode a tune for us. It's going to pluck the tines of a comb, which is going to play the individual notes. Now, I'll just call this something conceptual at the moment, which is plucked tines. There we go. We won't get too hung up on exactly what type of transfer is happening between these functions, but obviously the comb is going to provide the music then to the appreciate music function of the user. And that gives us our interface between the rotating drum and the comb and the user. We can set these to different colors again. So let's set this to a little bit that way. Let's set this one to a little bit this way, and away you go. And that is our basic conceptual design of the system. Nice and easy. Save it. Whoa, what happened? Oh, we're diffing against the baseline version, and these have all been added since the baseline. So you can see we can go to no diff and just see things as we've written them, but we can also see that if we diff against the master version, which we have checked in, that things have changed. We've added components, we've added interfaces, added items. If we go back up one level, nothing's changed up here. In fact, we can move things about, we can save them. Any of these aesthetic changes, they don't affect the design of the system. That's just affecting the representation of the design. So you won't see them as an explicit difference as you look down. But if you navigate back down again, then you'll see these have been added. But we can do something about that. We can commit this to, and we'll save it, and we'll say that our commit message is our initial conceptual design. And obviously this is a flawed design because we still have some work to do. So we can now see that the master branch has changed its version. Go back to no diff. We can go back to the master, and we can see that that is as it was. That's now updated, and it looks good. So let's go back to the other tool. We might create a new version here. We can see the music box here is this subdirectory. All these files are CSV. And so you can actually open them up in its normal Excel spreadsheet. You can look at exactly what it is that's inside them. Mostly you'll see a lot of UUIDs and whatever else, but these are intended to be very easy to compare and modify and generate and all of those things. And there's usually a human readable explanation of what these UUIDs are in that file. So that's been the case since version 0.1, and you can actually go back and diff between this version and 0.1 versions if you have been maintaining them in a Git repository. So let's create another tag. So we're going to create a version 2.0 tag. We're going to branch it at the current master, tag it at the current master, and away we go. So you can see those are the different versions that we've created. So for some reason they aren't quite showing up here. I think that's an incompatibility between the tools, but I promise that it will work if you do it with the normal tools and the tools are working correctly. But let's get interesting. So firstly, we can make the really obvious observation that there's no way to power this drum currently. So obviously there needs to be some power. So we can go back up, and what we'll do is we will add a new function to the user, and that is to wind the music box, because without power we're not going to go anywhere. And we're going to create a new type of flow. In this case we're going to call it something fairly specific. We're going to call it clockwise motion, and the reason we'll do that is going to become obvious as we go forward. We'll flow that down. That's a new function on the user, and it's a new function over here. So we need a way to store the energy, and the main thing we're going to do is put it in a spring. So we're going to create a clock spring, which is going to take that clockwise motion and it's going to release it as anti-clockwise motion. So we're going to store energy in that clock spring, and we're going to have our main axle in the device, which we're going to call the winding key, which is going to transmit both the clockwise motion and the anti-clockwise motion. So that gives the user something easy to grab onto. They will wind the key. The key will wind the clock spring. And then the clock spring is going to unwind back into the key itself. this anti-clockwise motion. So let's give the clock spring its own color. And that will make it a bit more obvious. Now the winding key is then obviously going to transmit the now anti-clockwise motion into the rotating drum, and that's how we're going to power this machine. So we save it, we commit it. We're going to commit this as version as a change to supply power to drum. So that's our change, that's our proposal, and we can say by committing this into the master branch, we are actually approving that change. So let's change that. Now diff to master again, and so you can see this is the new design of the system. So you can change the design over time, and you can see the differences between the different versions of the design as they change. Now, this is where it gets interesting again. So let's say we have multiple users. Let's say we have multiple teams, potentially, which are changing the same model. So let's create create some branches. So let's say we have 2 developers. We're just going to be working within a team as opposed to between different teams, because this is a small device, a small system. So we've got Dave and we've got Daryl. Any resemblance to persons living or dead is purely coincidental, I'm sure. So we'll set Daryl as the active branch. So we are now Daryl, and we're going to make some changes. So what you'll notice is if you make any changes out here in another tool, you can always go File and Revert, and that will make it consistent with that external system, with the external changes. So at the moment, all the branches are the same. We've got the master branch, which is the official blessed configuration register, the official design that everybody can compare to. And we've got the 2 branches for Daryl and Dave. Now, Daryl notices that there's a problem with the design. He notices that when you store the energy and you transmit it through this winding key, the music's going to play too fast. So it's just going to unwind very quickly, and you're not going to be able to hear the music for an appreciable amount of time. It's going to play too fast. So he says, let's propose that we add a governor to the system. And its purpose is to resist the motion. And we can be more specific about that in later changes. But for the moment, we're just going to say it's going to resist the motion, and it's going to set a type of flow between the 2 of just a resistive force, say. Make some aesthetic changes. Now you can see that sometimes the diffs are not useful. You can always turn them off. If we go to no diff, and there we go, it's all turned off again. We can make the aesthetic changes again. The governor's hanging onto this rotating disc, and we've decided more or less that there's a cog on the side of this rotating drum, and that the governor is going to be attached to that cog. So it's not attached necessarily to the main shaft of this winding key, but that's the way it is. So if we commit now, we're going to propose a governor mechanism. So that is now part of the CM system, part of the version control system. If we look back at the master, we can see we've added that since then. And we can see that Daryl's branch is now different to the Dave's branch, and it's different to the master branch. So let's jump back, and we'll switch back to now to Dave's branch, because he's going to propose some different changes. Refresh. It's gone because we're back in Dave's branch. He hasn't seen Daryl's changes yet, but he's making a different observation. He's going, if you're transmitting clockwise motion through a shaft into the clock spring, it's also going to go into the rotating drum. We don't want that. The music will play backwards. So we need some sort of other mechanism here. We'll provide a ratchet mechanism, and the ratchet mechanism is designed to transmit only the anti-clockwise motion. So it's going to take both clockwise. Whoops. It's going to take both clockwise and anti-clockwise motion from the winding key, but it's only going to transmit the anti-clockwise motion to the drum. So we delete this link. We're going to delete the interface, direct interface between the winding key and the drum. And this ratchet is going to become the mechanism, the connection between those things. So a bit of aesthetic cleanup, away we go. And you can see that's been deleted. It's not particularly useful to see that deleted interface while you're modifying things, so you can always switch back to no diff at any time and just make the changes as you want them to be in the final design. So let's call that our design for the moment. We'll save it and we'll commit it. We're going to propose a ratchet mechanism. So that's all well and good. Now we have 3 different versions. We've got a master version, a Darryl version, and a Dave version with different proposals in them. Now we have a meeting. We decide that we're going to accept both changes. So if we're in the master version, we actually switch here in the branches. Let's switch back to the master version, because now we're going to decide what is officially accepted. We're going to set it as the active branch, and obviously if you're using different Git tools, then they will present their information slightly differently. Refresh here, and we're back to the master. Neither of the proposals have happened yet. Neither of the proposals are in our system, and so we have to now merge those in. So what we do is we go to this tool here, we go to Git, we're going to merge. First we decide that we've accepted Darryl's changes. So we're going to merge the Darryl branch. They get merged in, and now if anybody who looks at the master will see this governor has been added. So that's now the official new version of the design. So if we branched diff to master, there's no difference because that is the master version now. But what about Dave's changes? It's been modifying the same diagram in a different way. Can those be incorporated as well? Well, yeah, because when we approve that, we merge that into the master version. Same sort of way. We pick Dave's changes. Okay, it thinks for a bit longer this time, but it merges it all perfectly. Okay, now what will we see if we refresh? Both sets of changes. Go back to no diff and say that this is the master version. It's actually accepted the ratchet, it's accepted the governor, the resistive force is coming in, the anti-clockwise motion is coming in. With a few aesthetic changes, move things around, make it look a bit nicer. Then maybe set the color of this one to be a bit different. That looks good. We can tell what's what, except the governor's probably a bit too close to the comb. We can tell what's what, and so that's our new design. We've accepted both sets of changes, and that actual acceptance of changes is what we talk about as configuration management. It's the version control is part of configuration management, and the other side is really accepting changes, managing what the approved version of the design is, and comparing. There are various other things once you actually get into production and whatever else, but that is the basic set of features. You're diffing, you're merging, all those sorts of things. That's the basic set of features for the 0.5 release. That's the basic capabilities of the system design tool at this time. And this is me signing off. Thank you very much for listening. Have a good one.